Monday at New York Comic-Con. How's everyone doing? Oh, come on, guys. Give me something a little bit more than that. How are you all doing today? Thank you very much. There we go. I am joined right now by the cast, one cast member, and the creators and directors of Prospect, which is produced by Dust, the awesome science fiction label under Gunpowder and Sky. I am joined by creators and directors Zeek, Earl, and Chris Caldwell, and star Sophie Thatcher. And before we actually get into the questions, we're gonna look at a trailer real quick if you guys don't mind. It's pretty cool.
We'll find a way to get on.
$27.42 requesting release.
I'm here to harvest. I have the location of a massive deposit of Orlac. The Queen's Lair. By my estimation, it's the largest anyone's ever seen. Someone is approaching.
Where are you from?
Nowhere.
How poetic.
The Queen's Lair.
Where is it?
Drop it!
Now, this is something I have never seen. In all my time in the green. A little girl.
We're in the same trough, you and I.
You don't have a ship?
No, I don't.
But you will find a way
To get on.
if you find that buried treasure.
Why should I trust you? You're a killer.
I am indeed. But are you? I can offer protection. I say together we ravage the Queen's Lair.
Even split.
Of course.
I sustained a wound. I was hoping you had some juice.
Here is our offer. I don't understand.
For the girl.
That is a bold offer.
Well, you're gonna have to trust me.
You're trying to trick me.
It was all in the name of self-preservation, Bertie. It was nothing personal.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? Can you tell us a little about the story that maybe, isn't completely explained in the trailer?
Yeah. So it's kind of a frontier kind of sci-fi story about a father and daughter freelance team that hitched their little pod to a freighter to kind of go out into the fringes of civilized space. And they're looking for this substance called Orlac, which is a rare and valuable substance that they have to kind of dig out of the ground. And then, obviously, things get complicated. They encounter a character named Ezra, played by Pedro Pascal, who's sort of a bandit outlaw type. And yeah, it's like a frontier space story, kind of with a Western flavor, where you've got prospectors and bandits and a posse of mercenaries. And it eventually turns into kind of like just a push to survive.
And yeah, Chris and I were huge sci-fi nerds growing up. We loved Star Wars. We had like the Star Wars visual encyclopedias that would like lay out in great detail all like the ships and the characters. And so this is our first feature film. This is an indie film. We had like the budget of half of a lightsaber fight, but we wanted to create an original universe. In like really great detail. So like everything's on a completely different culture, original language, original characters. In the trailer, you'll see Sophie's character wearing a sweatshirt that has a cartoon character, and like we invented a kids cartoon show in universe just to like kind of make these like little artifacts.
Very cool. Now, Sophie, can you breathe in that helmet at all?
Can I breathe?
Is it hard to breathe in that helmet
It
while
was
you're
hard,
running around?
especially the first week when we were working through it. I was scared I wouldn't be able to deliver any lines just because and I was already anxious, it being the first week and everything, but we fixed it. And it kind of like became an acting tool almost. And like once I had that helmet on, I was C, so.
Sophie suffered so much to make this movie. Like, we really wanted to insist that on this toxic alien moon, you have to wear your helmet the whole time. We're not going to come up with excuses like other movies do for why you get to take your helmet off. So what that really meant, though, is that our actors suffered greatly to make this film.
True to the story all the way through. And it's based on a short film that you guys did, too. What more does a feature-length story add to this?
I mean, the short film really did a lot to kind of establish the ideas we had about this kind of frontier world. It was similarly about a father and daughter that were looking for a substance, but character-wise, I mean, it sort of laid the building blocks for really the tone and kind of the flavor of the world. And then it was almost square one when we went to go write the feature.
And what were some of the challenges of creating a whole new world from scratch on this shoestring budget that you mentioned?
You want to talk about the shop?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have enough money to work with any, like, normal production design shop. We're also from Seattle, the Northwest, where the industry isn't as present. So we opened our own production design shop. We just rented an old boat building warehouse for a year, and we hired just kind of like all of our friends, people who made bikes, people who were like carpenters, and we just kind of all lived in this warehouse for 7 months and made everything from scratch. And it was like absolutely the most fun and exhilarating thing we could have done.
And I think it added an interesting flavor, kind of the DNA of the production design team that made all of the props and sets and costumes for this. A lot of them weren't coming from prop making backgrounds, but rather, industrial designers and that kind of thing. And we were really kind of, it's got a lot of style, it's got a lot of flavor in terms of like an original sci-fi universe, but we wanted it to have some utilitarian weight to it. And so I think that added a very interesting perspective to the design of all of the kind of accoutrement that you see throughout the film.
And what tips do you have for aspiring filmmakers? Because you guys kind of did this, as you said, with very little money, with a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears, and then you made it pretty big at some film festivals. What do you tell?
I mean, a lot of it, I think in retrospect, is because we didn't really know any better, or we didn't know how. We sort of came up, we're in Seattle and we're still in Seattle. We made this whole movie in Washington, and a lot of it was just not really having kind of the roadmap or the resources that would put you on a more traditional path. And so it really kind of, I guess, cuts away a lot of the preconceptions you have, the limitations that you have about how you might achieve something, and gets to the root of kind of the problem. And so we were just left to our own devices to figure out how do you get from A to B.
Yeah, I'd say, one thing is it took 4 years to get the movie financed, which was, during that time, we rewrote the script like 3 or 4 times, and we kept developing this world and adding more detail. And I guess if there was a tip, I'd just say don't rush it. It's like first feature film is like a pretty important thing. Like you want to get it right.
Very cool. I know that Jay Duplass is also in the film too. He plays your dad. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. He's a pretty big indie king. Did you guys have any help with him along the way? What was it like kind of, working with him in that prospect?
Oh man, Jay is awesome. He's also a director, he's a filmmaker, and it was there on our first week of shooting, and I remember on the second day just being so stressed out, and we were filming in this super cramped spaceship set, and I'm like sweating, and I shot the film as well, so I'm holding the camera like jammed up against the side, like my mind's racing, and he just like looks at me, he's like, hey dude, like stop. You need to drink water. I can tell you're getting dehydrated, and you don't actually have time to go get water. I know this. You need to ask someone to go get you water. And it was like, oh, yeah.
I'm a director. I can do that.
So we essentially had a mentor like on set. He had like a great time with you too.
Yeah, he was a great acting partner. And usually for our last takes, we would improvise just to see what happened. I don't think you guys used any of it.
We used some of it, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. But yeah, that helped to like build a connection with him, and he was just a really warm person in general. So.
Yeah, I think we had kind of a connection when we first our first interaction with Jay was Skyping with him about the role. And I think a big part of why he wanted to come onto our project was that he understood where we were coming from in terms of DIY. He was talking about, like on his first film, he was, the camera op and the boom operator and the director and the cinematographer. And, we're kind of, while it wasn't that bare bones and guerrilla for Prospect, it was kind of in a similar mentality.
And you mentioned Star Wars was kind of a big thing for you because you're both big sci-fi nerds, but what other films or stories maybe had a little bit of inspiration with this?
For the production design, we're obsessed with Ridley Scott's early movies, Alien, Blade Runner. We love that 80s aesthetic, and that definitely trickled into kind of the look of the film.
I think one of the things we wanted to do just from, particularly a production design standpoint, was to see how far we could push an indie budget in terms of the practicals, as opposed to a lot of VFX heavy green screen type stuff. We wanted to see how much we could render this world physically, tangibly in the props, the sets, the costumes, and so part of that was the only way that was possible was with this kind of big community shop that we described earlier, where we just kind of had this team that was trying to pump out as much density of detail as we possibly could. And then I think there's a lot of, as far as like the narrative and the characters are concerned, there's definitely a big Western influence. I mean, initially we were looking at a lot of like Sergio Leone spaghetti Western types, and then I think there's kind of a contemporary Western sort of vibe to it. Some of the Coen brothers films, there's kind of like, it's almost like True Grit meets Alien or something like that, but yeah.
And Sophie, what was it like to be working with Pedro Pascal? Because it seems like you guys kind of end up pairing off and having to go through this adventure together. What was that like?
He's also a really warm person. It helped that the way that we were filming, most of it was in order. So at first, as our characters are very distant, I felt a bit distant from him and I wasn't close with him. But then we kind of build a connection, and as the movie progresses, we become closer, and he is a riot.
Pedro is
He brought
stupid
a
talented.
very great energy to the set. Yeah.
I mean, the character's one of these kind of classic, loquacious, sort of Western outlaws that has kind of a real, like, he's riding that line between charm and menace, which Pedro just, kills.
It's so funny, because Pedro is, he's not like a method actor. Like, he'll be like incredibly goofy. He would often put his phone in like the crotch of his suit and be playing dance music and just be dancing around and be like,
It's like 90s rap.
yeah, like totally nuts. And then like you'd yell action, and then he's like killing somebody, just like totally on. And my favorite moments where we'd be doing like a really complicated stunt or something particularly uncomfortable. There's like a scene where he gets shot, which is not a spoiler, I don't think. I think it's in the trailer. But so he's like wearing like a squib vest and all these like, he's wired up, and it's like miserably hot. And he just turns and he's like, guys, I'm doing this in one take. We're like, okay.
All right, dude.
And he did it in one take. It was like, it's one of my favorite like shots in the film. Like he can just like make it happen.
That's fantastic. We're gonna switch gears real quick. If you guys have been hanging around the SYFY WIRE live stage or watching online, then you know that we have a short little game that we play called Roll for Question, which is we roll a 20-sided die and then we ask a question. If you guys wanna give it a roll.
Sophie.
No pressure.
No, more.
10.
Dramatic.
10.
Yeah. All right.
10. All right. You're stuck on a desert island. What inanimate object do you hope becomes your best friend, and what do you name it?
Oh, God.
What inanimate object?
Kind of appropriate. You know, they're kind of stranded on a strange planet.
Yeah. Like that Tom
Yeah.
Hanks movie. I've never actually seen that.
Is this like we could bring whatever we want?
Yeah.
Or it's like
yeah.
stuff that's
People
on a desert
pitch.
island?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a group activity.
I think probably a volleyball, and I'll name it Wilson.
There you go. Nice.
What would you bring? The desert
Would I? What does Tom Hanks do in that one movie? I've never seen it.
That's just what I just said.
That was already taken.
Can we go again?
Do you want me to do it again? I'll do it again.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
All right. 16.
16. All right. You're in a huge Game of Thrones battle. What's your weapon of choice?
Oh, shit.
I've never seen Game of Thrones.
What's your weapon of choice in a battle, no matter what it is?
Okay, I'm going to assume I'm on foot, not on a horse.
Or a dragon.
Well, if I'm on a dragon, then it's like game over. Damn. I think I'd want a spear. I think I'm like a little stocky. I can kind of get under things. Like those battles are like so dense. Gosh, that's just horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, I would hide.
Smart.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to get caught in a medieval battle in any capacity, so I
just-
think.
Yeah.
Armor.
Trying to stand.
Lots of armor. I'm not going to play dead.
Fantastic. Well, that is it. We are done here, but we will be back very soon. Make sure to follow along with us on Twitter using hashtag It's a Fan Thing, hashtag NYCC, and we will be back. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jackie Jennings with SYFY WIRE. If you can't get enough of New York Comic Con, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel for news, interviews, cosplay, and so much more. What are you waiting for?